Well, thanks for coming, and I want to take a moment to welcome our artist, our exhibiting artist, right? This for the past month or so. It's Kelly Schrader. She is a graduate of the Virginia Tech School of Visual Arts, and she has been exploring ideas that are related to found object sculpture, which is a form of art making based on collecting objects of personal significance or personal aesthetic interest and assembling them into compositions. As Kelly has mentioned in her artist statement, she's influenced in this practice by people like Robert Rauschenberg, Jasper Johns, and other contemporary American artists. Her work does bear more than a passing resemblance to the work of Robert Rauschenberg, especially in the use of paint to unify disparate objects. And this show is in particular referencing an idea of self-portraiture, in which she has commented that it's a way of thinking about self-portraits that are non-representational, that is to say, not just pictures of what you look like, but somehow objects collected providing an indication of who you are. And so those are the sort of the ideas that Kelly has tried to incorporate in her work, and she's going to tell us much more about that. And I'd like you all to formulate some questions if you have any questions to ask, and also join me in welcoming Kelly Schrader.
Okay, so I'm just going to do a short kind of intro, and then we'll have time to take questions afterwards. I'm going to try to stick to the cards so I don't ramble on for too long. The show you see here revolves around self-portraiture, identity, and process. So to me, it's impossible to separate who you are or who you describe yourself as from where you've been or the experiences that you've had in your life. Geography can be a huge part of someone's identity. You get the notions of nationalism or pride for your city or your neighborhood or your coast, what have you. It's an interesting idea that I'm exploring. This is really prevalent, people wanting to belong to groups that also somehow make them an individual. So whether it's your race, sexuality, ethnicity, religion, if you wear glasses, however you identify yourself, you're belonging to a group with other people, but somehow that makes you you. And it's interesting because this is really prevalent, people identity via categorization, but really it's more accurate to say that we're all an amalgam of all of the things that we've experienced or heard or seen in our life. Every little moment that we experience has an effect on us, whether we know it and we can perceive it, or whether it's some imperceivable small thing that has an effect on us unconscious or subconsciously. Our lives, our histories, and where we come from and where we've been all shape who we are and how we think. And every decision that we make comes from somewhere within this web of our existence. Like everything that we've experienced influences our decisions and our choices. So how exactly does this play into what you see? I have a personal philosophy that art is evidence of idea or thought. And if that is true, then what is our thoughts? That is who we are. So then art is evidence of the self. And that fits in nicely with this whole idea that art is life, vice versa. And also, I don't know if you guys have heard that there's this idea that no matter what you're making, what picture you're drawing or anything that you do, it's kind of a self-portrait just because you're the one that's making it. So pretty much I'm trying to address this concept by attempting to harness that creative process. So I'm trying to pay attention to all of these things that affect me And more importantly, some of the things that don't affect me, so things that would pass over, I try to stop and notice. So the things that make you form an idea or want to do something becomes my focus and the idea of the work. Pretty much this allows me to make anything in my life that I come into contact with up for grabs for art media. So I can use anything, any moment in my life, I can harness something from it and create something from it. I try to combine unconscious decisions like randomization or just selecting an object no matter how mundane I think it is with artistic decisions like following an aesthetic or combining things based on a reason that I've put it on my own. And in this way I think that I stay more true to reality, because in reality sometimes things affect you and you're like, hey, this has affected me in this big way and I know how it affected me. And other times you may not even know until years later, and other times we force our own meaning onto experiences. So therefore, my process is very dependent on time. I mean, for me to collect experiences, ideas, objects, time has to pass, obviously. But also, I like to make these movements and then let time pass so I can go back and reflect on it. And that's another important step of being able to move forward after a piece, having it sit there and being able to go back and think I know why I made this decision. Do I really know why? Or maybe there's something else behind it. And to sum all that up, everything that you see here is looking at the same kind of question, the same question in different ways. And that is, how do you visualize time in relation to the self? Thank you.
Well, I'd like to encourage you all to ask questions.
I just have a comment because I really liked what you said about experiences and what you've seen and heard and felt. And I always say that the only thing that we really know in our mind is what we've seen, what we've heard, what someone's told us, what we've felt and experienced for ourselves. So that's what we have in our brain is where we've been from day one here on Earth to the present moment right now.
Exactly, yeah. So, I hate to bring this up, but did you see the other day that Donald Rauschenberg has passed away yesterday?
No, I didn't see that. Oh my God, no! Take it down. Let's leave. What? I came across that last night, and I was thinking about this show. I was thinking about how so many artists have been influenced by him. So many people I know were influenced by him, and by way of just kind of providing some connection to that, if you are not familiar with the work of Robert Rauschenberg, he was a pioneer in this this very American art form of sort of chronicling experience through the objects that he encountered in that experience, and certainly was an influence to more than one generation of artists. And he probably became most well known in the 50s and 60s, and it is sad that he passed away the other day. But I wondered if there was anything specific about looking at his work or his contemporaries that you could point to specifically in either a specific element of a painting or just in a process way. Well, I actually have done several research papers on Robert Rauschenberg just because I love him so much. And although the end result is kind of in the same vein, our processes did differ. He spoke about his work that he would walk along the streets and just try not to think about what objects he was picking up and just pick up whatever objects, take them back to the studio and have all the objects there and make whatever he wanted to make. And he was always adamant about saying there's not a reason that he put them the way that they are. Like, he wanted it to be personal to him but universal for other people to get their own things, their own meaning from what he was making. So he tried to separate himself in that way, whereas I'm trying to be more involved, I guess. I think the artist touch is important because, I mean, this is self-portraiture that I'm working on right now, so I try
That's a
to
very
be in there.
important, really insightful difference because you're talking about identity, and he sort of was trying not to talk about identity in a way. He's talking about he liked the randomness, because he was involved with people like John Cage and this Eastern idea of sort of chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I look at a piece like that, and I do think that there are the layering of ideas and the collection. But for you, it adds up to an idea about identity and you in particular.
And I mean, a problem that I see a lot with stuff that is very personal is sometimes people will try to make it so personal that no one else could get anything from it if they see it. So I do try to have this personal drive, but to come up with an end result that's not just something for me personally and anyone can look at it and get something from it, because we all people and we all have our own identities and there's a lot of overlap between that. Yeah.
When you put your intent into it, it kind of leaves behind the artist's essence. You know what I mean? Like when you look at something, you can kind of feel the personality of the person. So I can kind of get where you want to be related more with your art because it leaves behind an impression of the artist and a feel of the artist's energy.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you're in that way of finding, collecting things, do you find yourself looking for particular objects? Do you find yourself looking for particular shapes? Do you find yourself that? What drives it?
Well, I definitely am drawn to certain color palettes and certain objects. I mean, obviously, I think a lot of people fall prey to this idea that just because something's old, that it's really interesting to look at. But I think that there's something to that. So many people think that. I mean, you see an old object, this object does have like a lot of history. So, sorry.
I see similarities in some of the things you definitely, there's this recurring theme of circles in a variety of media, whether it's a saw blade or a light shade or a wheel of some kind. And that kind of is something I see recurring throughout.
Well, I try to notice those things and play into that. Like on that one, I did notice a circle thing starting to happen and kind of a more geometric feel, so I tried to go for that. But I also do try to pay attention to things that I'm not drawn to and why am I not drawn to that. So if I look at a pile of objects and I'm like, oh, these ones are the cool objects that I want to use. But I also try to think, well, why didn't I want to use all these other objects? What is about them that didn't interest me? And try to think about that as well. So like who I am, but also who I am not, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah, that's I had a teacher who said sometimes finding out what you don't like is just as important as finding out what you like. It's not just about liking necessarily. And then the ears, they demand to be heard. What's going on with the ears?
That is actually, it's called family portrait because it really is my family's ears. It's 4 of my family members' ears, and I don't know, to me, just thinking about the ear and like my ear looks completely different than my mom and dad's, and both my brothers look completely different. So it's just an interesting thing where you come from. I would think that there would be some resemblance in the ears, but it's just a random ear. It could be anyone's ear, but it's my family's ear, but it's hard to tell just based on the shape of, I don't know. It was like an interesting thing to me to realize that ears are so crazy.
And they're really super unique. I mean,
Yeah.
They're like as unique as fingers.
And even, I mean, if you get punched in the head once, your ear is different forever. It's crazy.
Not an experiment. But Dan, I have to say, maybe this is too easy a connection, but I had a question about the ears, and then they have the appearance of being severed. It's painting ears, and
Yeah.
leads you to then go
Yeah, I did. I guess it's a little bit of tongue in cheek, just me thinking that I'm really funny and really. But yeah, it is kind of an homage, I guess, to Van Gogh a little bit.
Anybody else? Questions?
Oh, I was gonna say earlier that like and dislike are kind of like the same, like two sides of the same coin. So it's kind of cool to look at both.
Yeah, I always say if someone asks me what my favorite anything is, it will be a different answer depending on my mood or the time of day or what day it is. But if you ask me my least favorite thing, I'll always know, like the things that I hate the most. But the things I like, it's always a huge cloud that I don't know which one's the best. But you always know what you don't like.
Yeah, that's true. I find that it's almost maybe the older I get, when people ask you, what's your favorite this or that, it's like it's terrible.
Yeah, I'll start to sweat and hyperventilate. Like, I don't know. It's too many things.
You have too much choice.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I know Kelly, and I know you just graduated in May, and I think it's interesting, like if you could say how you dealt with making all of this new work since May, after being out of school where you had no school studio on hand anymore. How did you deal with not being an artist?
Yeah, it was definitely a really hard transition, more mental than anything, because I was used to having this space that I could go and create, and I could do whatever I wanted in this space, and it was only mine. I've been living with my parents since I graduated. I'm about to move, but I have been living with my parents, and I've been using their garage as a studio, and they were nice enough. My dad cleared out one side and set up all my stuff for me, and I had a little studio. And I think that's why this identity thing came into such a big play. Because of this show, I had a reason to work, and because of the transition and the struggle that I was dealing with, I had a lot to think about. I'm about to move to a state I've never lived in before, and thinking about where I come from, like a lot of these things have objects from where I come from in my hometown that I hadn't lived there for 4 years, and I had realized how much I'm actually going to miss it and all the things I never noticed about it before. So it did play a big part in this show, but transitioning was hard. You just have to do it. You just have to keep working. You have to make yourself do it.
Which is not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy.
That is a really really important aspect of people. Sometimes we've been complaining about being in school, but especially for artists, one of the great things that school provides is deadlines. And one of the things that you find out when you are not in school is that you don't have deadlines, and you find out how helpful deadlines are. That's definitely a challenge that comes up. And so actually having a show to work for can function as a deadline, and maybe that is something that. Because I didn't even realize that all this work is since May.
Almost all of it. Some of them are a little bit older, but I've reworked them in some way, so they're all new as they are right now.
That's great. That's a lot of work. Yeah. So as a teacher addressing students, that would be a thing that I could say to you. Look at all this work you did. Like, what is that? What is that? 7 months. Not even 6 months, because this was up last month. Yeah, and so as we said, Kelly was at the Virginia Tech School of Visual Arts, and while she was there, one of her professors was my wife, Betsy Bannon. This is Betsy here, and she. So I want to ask Betsy, what do you see? Do you see this as continuity, as change, as development? How does it relate to the work she was doing when she was working with you?
I would definitely see some continuity. There are elements that I recognize from working with Kelly for a couple of years, I guess. I remember the ears starting, for one thing, and that you've been talking about that idea for a while. But then the others, like I feel like I've never seen that X shape before, and the painting on the materials that are not archival, most likely. And so some of the stuff that Kelly picked up at school to work with ended up working out somehow. Like they would come into the painting studio and the class would look at it like, what is she gonna do with that? And something always came out of it. So that ingenuity, I think I'm still seeing a lot, which makes me glad that that can carry on, you know, past being in a class where you are given assignments. And so yeah, I definitely see some continuity. This kind of work is a little new that I've seen, and maybe the brighter colors, but I see that as development, logical development.
And this embroidery piece, actually, that embroidery piece is based on the drawing you did.
Yeah, for class, yeah.
We went to cadaver lab at another
Yeah.
school in Virginia, at Virginia Tech in Roanoke. And that head, like I recognized it right away when I saw the image of it, that that's a head, one of the heads that she drew at one of those sessions. I remember the woman, I remember the figure.
Yeah, she was my favorite.
Yes. It's like a portrait of her.
Anybody? Other questions? Well, if not, I just want to say thank you very much for coming, for bringing your work, sharing with us, and sharing your thoughts on it.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Thank you.